Oh, what a wonderful day. Yeah, spiritual time versus human time. Have you ever had something that you were wanting to do or working on and you had a timeline worked out for it and it didn't work that way, but it did work out on another way? Yeah, another timeline. Yeah, and that's called God's time. So I wrote in the right up there that everything in life happens in divine order. However, as humans, we try and control the time and order the events that lead to our desired good. Thus, we create a lot of angst and stress in our life. The power of commitment and letting go of control are spiritual practices worth striving for. So it's the idea of let go and let God. So we're going to talk a little bit more. Well, what does that really mean? Theme, divine order. The affirmation is divine order gives structure and purpose to life. And Doug's affirmation. Divine right action takes place in my life, and there's a gradual, orderly, sequential unfoldment into form of the highest and best that I can be. And I use that one all the time because I need it. So the first thing here, before I get into the 3 points, that we want to get real clear about is that we as individuals are always on an as need to know basis. Not when we think we need to know, but when we need to know. I like to be a little more comfortable and know before, so I have time to work on it, but that doesn't necessarily happen. I just went through that whole 3-week period of angst because I had my brother's final tax return and my buddies in, and I'm waiting to see because I know they had to pay a sum of money and I have to make arrangement for the financing. And, I'd like a little bit, like a week or so to do it. And I'd like to know, is anybody like that when they do their taxes and stuff like that? Well, of course, here it is Friday morning, and taxes are due Tuesday. And I finally get a call from the accountant. They sent me the numbers that I got to do and said, oh, you can pick up the stuff this afternoon. And the one I use is out in Canmore. And of course, there's all the angst that was building up because of, well, how am I going to arrange this, that, or the flow of money? And, I like to know. And when I don't know, when I think I should know, I get a little bit of angst inside. Does that happen to anybody else? Yeah? And that's just simply a lack of trust and faith and a lack of understanding. Well, not an understanding because I understand it, but acceptance of the process of how it works. So the first thing I want to talk about here is control. Anybody here got control issues? Yeah. So what the first point is to be in control 100%, and I'm going to tell you how to do it, and it really works. Practice it. Is to totally give up the need to be in control. A little bit more on that coming. Ernest Holmes said a couple of interesting things here. He said that the spirit controls the law, and the law of mind is not selective. So the law in us is not selective. It is receptive without caring what it receives. So you can put anything in there, and the law in you that works through you by means of you creating things for you will work, whatever you put in there. If you get upset with something and you're putting that in there, then it just gives you more of an opportunity to be upset. Have you ever found out that when you start getting upset about something, then you got all kinds of little things crop up to upset you even more? It is creative without caring what it creates. It doesn't make any decisions about what it creates. It creates what you feed it. Just like if you go to plant peas in your garden, it doesn't grow corn. Well, why not? Well, that's because it's receptive. It doesn't make any decisions about what it's growing. It grows whatever's put into it. And it knows how to do without consciously knowing that it is doing or what it is doing. But it knows the how-tos. And that's one thing that we have a problem with is the how-tos. He also said that conscious mind controls the law of mind. Selectivity is the office of the conscious mind. So we get to select Well, creativeness is the office of the inner mind, that inner presence there that knows what to do and accepts that, whatever we put in there, and creates that experience for us. So the key here is control yourself, not others. Have you ever tried to control anybody else? It don't work, does it? No. Especially if you got a kid that you're working with. We got a little great granddaughter we're working with. You can't control her. She got a mind of her own and does what she wants to do. So controlling yourself is true power. So the way, in order to be totally in control of your life, I said, was to give up the need to be in control. So the more you let go of control, the more control you have, because there's a spiritual presence and power within us that knows exactly what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and what order and time it needs to be done in to bring into fruition whatever it is that we desire and whatever it is that we're working on. And every now and again, some of us get a real lesson on control. I can remember in 2013 when I had my medical emergency in Italy and come back, and I was in the hospital for the 25 days. And I found out that when I was in there, the first thing I knew and recognized was I wasn't in control of a damn thing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing I was in control of was myself inside. I wasn't in control of the cleaning ladies. I wasn't in control of the nurses. I wasn't in control of the doctors. I wasn't in control of serving the meals. I wasn't in control of any of that. And that's really, really hard to do when an individual like myself is. I like to be in control of the experience. I like to have things work in an orderly fashion, what I think is an orderly fashion. True? Anybody else here like that? Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh my God, I'm not in control of a single thing except what goes on in here. Absolutely nothing. So, being the kind of person I am, I like to analyze stuff and strategically plan. So what I did was, well, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I've got to find out a system I can work in this, not being in control in. So what I did was I got my laptop and I analyzed everybody's activities, when they come generally and what they did. And I put it all down in a chart and I analyzed it. And then my goal was to do lots of walking there to keep moving. And so what I would do is I would go and I would do my walking and my activities and then be back when other people were coming to do what they needed to do with me. So it was kind of a game there because I was kind of in control again too, you see. But it was kind of neat because I was always there. They never had to look for me. I was always there when they usually came. And when they didn't, I was bebopping around doing my laps with my IV and stuff like that. So it gave me a sense of being in control, even though I wasn't in control at all. But through that, I found out I really was in control of the experience because everything that I needed to have and everything I needed to experience and everything that people needed to do was done for me. And by the way, not only did I do it that way, I also kept a schedule of when people come to visit me and who come and how often they came, so I could chart that in the system so I could make sure I was there. A little bit overkill. I don't know if anybody else would do that, but I needed to do that. So it's really interesting being a planner and a goal setter and being in strategic planning to come to the place of not trying to control everything. So what I do now is I strategically plan an experience and, get everything in order that we need to do to get there and get set up where we're staying. And then I go there and be 100% flexible. So for example, we're going to Victoria a week on Monday for a week. Now we've got everything planned. The flights are planned, cabs, the resorts planned, and everything. But what I'm going to do there, I have absolutely no idea. So I get to go and be spontaneous and see what happens. And that's kind of exciting for somebody that likes to control things, is to be able to have that medium. So I've been practicing that quite rigorously for many years, and I'm getting really good at it. So it takes a lot of the angst out. The only issues I have with traveling is going to the airport and going through security. For some reason, that gets me all uptight. Once I'm through, you can ask Anna. I'm just the nicest guy in the world, but until I get through that, I get a little tense. So we all have our things that we've got to work on and work with. So remember that if you want to be in control, work at trying to give up controlling things. And never try to control people because you can't do it. And, it's not really overt about how we try to control people. We do it through innuendo and suggestion and a little statement here and a little statement there. Especially being in this teaching, we get very sophisticated and very, very good at how we try to control people. Haven't you found that you get smarter at how to try to control people when you're in this philosophy? You get a lot of smarter, but it's the same thing. So we got to learn to let that go. So our job is knowing and focusing on what we desire and doing what we can do. So this is what I desire, and what can I do? I desire a garden of peas so I could get everything ready, and what can I do? Well, I can plant the peas, and I can nurture them. Do I have anything to do with the growing of it? Not really. That's not my job. That's God's job. So we've got to focus on what we can do and what we have right here and right now, and know what God's job is. God's job is the how to do it, the how-tos. So that's where we got to let go and let God. Because anytime we interfere within all the steps that are going to happen to the achievement of our desired goal or objective, anytime we interfere with that, we just make a mess of it. And a lot of times we don't get started because we don't know how to do anything. Is that true? Yeah. I could remember when I first got into this teaching and that, I think it was the second Sunday, and that voice said to me that I was going to enjoy being a minister. Well, I had no comprehension of what that meant at all, but I was willing to just show up and be guided, led, and directed. And truly, it didn't work. And could I have ever imagined the way it was going to work? Absolutely not. Absolutely. One of the things I did for many years is, and I quit doing it because it never worked. And I did it for a game. So whenever I was trying something new, I always tried to figure out how it was going to happen. The steps. Anybody ever do that? And I was after it was about 15 or 20 years I did that just for the fun, and I batted 100%. Never once was I ever correct on what I thought would happen to get me there. Not once. Not even close. So it's really, and I did that not because I was trying to control things, just because I was just seeing if I could figure it out. And I couldn't. Because there are all kinds of interesting things that happen. And sometimes it's some of the minor tragedies along the way that are the biggest learning experience to get us where we're going. And people say, oh, well, if you'd known you were going to do that, would you have set that as a goal? Well, most people would say probably no. But whatever that happened obviously was part of what the journey was that I needed to take. Well, how do I know that? Well, it wouldn't have happened had I not taken that part of the journey, you see. So never question those things. Just look at them and go with them. The next point here is really, really one of the most important steps of bringing some good into your life as an individual. Always make sure you're ready. Always make sure you're ready. Too often, people say they want something, and it starts to happen, and then they go, well, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm going to put it off a little bit. I need a little more time. Oh, I'd like a little bit more money first. I'd like to have some insurance that it's going to work before I do it. And I get people for counseling, and they go, I've been working on this, and then I ask them what's happening in their life, and I said, well, what's the problem? Well, they want to say, I want to know what's the right time to do it, to start moving forward. What's the right time? And I will go, now is the right time. Well, how do you know that? Well, it's happening. If it wasn't the right time, it wouldn't be happening. So when you get those protests as well, I need a little more time or a little more money, and this stuff's happening, that's because it's time to do it. We always try to put it off or try to come up with a reason why now's not the right time. Is that just me, or is that other people too? Yeah, a few other people. And I always say, I call it the blisters on the heel concept. Because it starts to happen and people dig their heels in because they're being pulled into the experience and they're resisting. They got the heels in there, and you get blisters in your heels when you're drug along like that with them stuck in the ground. Yeah, it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't time to do that. Well, what if I make the wrong decision? Is anybody ever, well, I don't want to make the wrong decision. I want to make sure I'm right. Well, the decision is to go with what's going on right now. Well, what if it's wrong? Well, so what? What if it is wrong? So what? Obviously, you needed to do that for some particular reason, or else it wouldn't have been happening. Because we always like to be sure that what we're doing is the right thing. We always want to be guaranteed that it's going to work out the way we think it should work out. The other thing that's really bad here too, whenever we're doing stuff, is we get attached to outcomes about how it should look or how it should be or how it should be, when it should be. I remember being a young boy and having this desire to go stand on the Great Wall of China. I just wanted it. I was in my early teens, and one of the things that all my life I wanted to do that. And I remember when I was working at SAIT, this opportunity come up to be an instructor in this new business center that they were starting. And they were looking across Canada and all the colleges for 2 instructors to go over and get this program started. So I applied for it. And of course, I'm in this teaching of philosophy, so I pretty much knew that there's a good chance I'm going to get it. And then there were 3 people selected for the final interview, and they were going to take 2 of them. So I'm there wondering who's coming with me. I was really attached to it. I was just thought for sure, and I've in this philosophy of teaching, I'm doing everything right. Everything. I was the one that wasn't picked. I was devastated because I was attached to the outcome, you see. I was devastated. I couldn't figure out why it didn't work. However, something interesting happened, because when I was going to be gone, I was here and I ended up meeting someone that became a mentor of mine. And that was a very powerful experience in my life from his teaching. He was a unity minister called Jack Boland. He had 4,000 or 5,000 2 services a day in Warren, Michigan. He's quite the guy. And I actually had a couple of private sessions with him and got to know him, but I wouldn't have done it had I been over there. And that was far more important than me going to China. You see? Sometimes when we get disappointed, what we get disappointed for is a way better than what we would have done had we gone. Well, then it come up again a few years later, and I'm really excited because I did a treasure map and Oh, you should have seen it. It was good. And I did everything right, and I knew for sure this time I was going. I knew it. I didn't even get an interview. I was devastated because for sure I had grown spiritually. I knew more, and I was doing everything right. And again, I was attached to the outcome, and I was devastated. Oh, well, I guess, there's got to be a reason for it. Well, it just so happens when I would have been over there this time, I wasn't. I got the group from Red Deer of a few people called me and said, hey, Doug, we want you to come up here and start a center in Red Deer. And I was just finishing off my course, which I wouldn't have been able to do had I gone. And I went up and I started the center in Red Deer, which was not a bad deal for me because I really grew a lot from doing that experience and finishing my ministerial training. I still didn't go to China. And so, we're talking here in the early 80s that this happened. And so time goes along, and I go to Red Deer and back to Calgary, go through a burnout, and ended up going back teaching at SAIT. And I just left it on the back burner because, I put a lot of energy and attention into it, still had the desire, but, it was back there, and I'm just going, oh, well, I'd learned. You got to just let it go, and God will bring it to you when it's time. Well, it was 2001, and the dean called me into his office, and he said, Doug, we're going to start a program over there on a test basis, and I'd like you and Tony to go over and do the first set of courses for us. Do you think you could fit it in? And that's in northern China. I said, sure. So there I am, not having to be concerned about anything. And I get over there, and we got a couple of days in Beijing. And so where did they take us? To the Great Wall. I actually went twice on that trip. I went on the tourist version and then the Chinese version of it. That's a different story. But I got to stand there on the Great Wall. And it happened, but no way it happened any way I thought it should have, or when I thought it should have, or how it should have happened. And that's where I learned a lot about not being in control of the experience, just doing the work. And if it doesn't work out, there's always something better going to happen. And just keep holding that in faith that it'll work out. So that was a long time for that to come into fruition. But it was an interesting experience. So always remember that. And the most important thing when you're doing anything is no attachments at all to income. No attachment to outcomes. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't say, okay, well, I'm working on the goal. Shouldn't I be attached to it? No, you can expect good things to happen. There's a difference between expectation and attachment. Because with expectation, if it doesn't quite work out that way or work out the way you did, there's a higher reason for it. And if it's important, it'll come around again when you put the energy and attention into it. And the third and final idea is called the power of commitment. That's making a commitment. And what you want to know is, you might say, well, I'm not committed to anything. You are always committed to something. It just is a matter of knowing what you're committed to. You're committed to coming here every Sunday and receiving a spiritual message. So you do that. And people say, oh, I'm not interested in that anymore. Well, that's what they're committed to. So you're always committed to something. The question that one has to ask themselves, what is it that I'm committed to? One of my favorite stories about commitment was from a guy called William Murray. And he was with the Scottish Himalaya expedition in 1951. And he wrote this. Well, when I said that nothing had been done, I erred in one important matter. We had definitely committed ourselves and were halfway out of our ruts. We had put down our passage money, booked a sailing to Bombay. This may sound too simple, but it is great in consequence. Until once one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elemental truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. So something else begins to happen. A whole stream of events issue from this decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way. And he said, I learned the deepest respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So once we start, that creative intelligence goes to work on it, and in divine order will bring to us everything it is that we need. However, we can't be sitting around on our rears going, yeah, but. Yeah, but. Does anybody did that? Well, that sounds great, but. So sooner or later, we got to get off our butts and do it. And when we're moving, we could be guided, led, directed, and inspired. But we can't do it if we're not moving towards what it is we say we want. So divine right order takes place in our life at all times and in all situations. And there's a difference between making a commitment and making a contribution to your journey in life. And it's about as clear as the difference between a pig and a chicken. Oh, yeah, we got to tell the story, you see. There's got to be more. So the pig and the chicken are walking down the street of this small country town, and they pass in front of the local restaurant. And the sign said, bacon and eggs, $7.99. And the chicken looks up at the sign and nudges the pig. I make the biggest contribution to that meal. And the pig looks at the sign and looks at the chicken, and he said, for you, it's a contribution. But for me, it's a total commitment. So I always tell people, I have to explain it to people, because I always tell them that what you need to do is you need to be a pig, not a chicken with your life. You need to be committed. And to keep in mind also, we're always committed to something. Some people are committed to finding out something wrong with everything. Have you ever noticed somebody like that? I used to go to this our coffee shop with a bunch of instructors. They all sit around, 20 of them, talk about the issues and what the problem was. And then I'd go sit down and I'd say, okay, well, what's the solution? How would you solve the situation if you made a commitment to do it and had the power to do it? What would you do? And then pretty soon they all got up and left. Nobody talked. Because nobody was interested in spending time and energy on how to resolve it or what they would do if they were in charge. They just wanted to sit around and complain about what was wrong. Have you ever been around that type of situation and heard that? Yeah. So I know for myself, as I know for each and every one of you here, that divine right action does take place in our life. And then there is that gradual, orderly, sequential unfoldment into form of the highest and best that we are. And I know that for myself to be so, and I know it for each one here, and so it is. So it is. Thank you.